Okay, time to play around with the latest heat treat results. And what I'm going to do is I've got all these marked, right? This is the new heat treat right here. This is the last one that came out. So this is like the third heat treat that I've done. Now these were not heat treated yet. They were still raw. But this is the third heat treat that I've done with this batch. This entire batch. It started out as 44 pounds. This was the good stuff from the batch. Alright, so I'm going to break into it carefully and compare it to raw pieces. And you'll see in a minute what I'm talking about. I haven't chipped any of this yet, so I don't know how well it heat treated. This heat treat is it's a relatively low heat treat. Hold on. I need to label this one before I forget. So this is the third heat treat. It came out actually a couple days ago, and I just been sitting on it until I had time to do a video. This one was, I think it was 385 degrees for 3 hours. So it's relatively light. And the reason I did that is just to be safe. Some of this may need to go back in and go up to 450. Now I did another heat treat prior to this with some other ones that were poor quality from this 44 pound batch. I think I went up to 440. Yeah, 440 degrees. So it can take more heat, but I didn't want to take any chances. Now that we're thoroughly confused, so this is the third heat treat. Where is the, I want to compare the raw stuff, number 4, to this. This is the heat treat stuff. I want to compare the raw stuff. Okay, this is the number 4. See? All right. Okay. So let's do that. Let's just compare this one first. Number 4 first. It's easy to get this stuff all mixed up if I end up putting them in the same box, because I haven't put a label in these yet. I've just put them in Ziploc bags. They need a little label like this one here. Okay, so this is the raw state of number 4. The first thing you notice is a slight difference in color. This one on the right is the heat treat. It's a little bit darker and more red. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing, hopefully it naps a lot better. So let's try it. I'm going to compare these two in nappability. Okay. Okay, so this is the raw one. Yeah. It's easy for me to get mixed up. If these were the same color, I would have a hard time figuring out what's what. Yeah, rock to point. Okay. It looks like I was going to do this one all by itself as a heat treat, but I did not. I have a little note that says all by itself heat treat. I did not do that. I heat treated that batch here. Okay, so this one, it naps all right in a raw state. And that's expected because this one was set aside as some of the stone that napped pretty good in the raw state, straight out of the box, so to speak. Yeah. So it naps all right in a raw state. I can make a point out of this without heat treating it. All right, so yeah, it's just typical raw chert. It is translucent, so it's kind of nicer than the regular stuff. The regular stuff just gray blah. This one has a little bit of translucency. I can run long flakes on it, fairly long. Okay, so there you go. This is the raw. Don't get it mixed up with the heat treat, because sometimes it's only red on the outside and on the inside it's still the original color. I don't see any gloss to it. Let's see. Let's just do some more. I can't tell if it's more fragile or not yet. Hold on. I don't see any difference in glossiness, so it may need to go back in, because I want to see a substantial difference, if any. If it is going to be substantially different, I want to see how substantially different with heat. Is it going to respond to higher heat? I want to see. First, I want to see if it responded to this heat. And that, I do see some glossiness right there, but not much on this side. Okay, hold on. There's some gloss there. Hold on, let's see. Let's see if this one has any gloss under the cortex for the raw stuff. Yeah, that's semi-glossy. So it got a little bit glossier under the cortex with the heat treat. Yeah. But it's already a little bit glossy in the raw state. I still can't tell if it's easier or not. And the fact that I can't tell means it probably is not much different. It does not feel much different. Although that was easy to remove right there. And there is a little bit of gloss there. Yeah, okay. This can run decent long flakes. Look at that. That's pretty decent. Now, I don't know if I can do that with this other one. I did run a long flake there. Let's try to run a long, narrow flake. Well, that wasn't fair because it broke up. Hold on. It's not a fair comparison. There was something in the way, probably in the stone. Inconsistency. No, this one is not running long flakes. Let's keep trying to make sure. Just double check. It's just wide, and there's no glossiness at all here, but there is some on this one. Just slight difference. I think what I'm going to need to do is go over 400 degrees on the heat treat to get a substantial difference. It feels a little bit easier, and I can run a long flake, long and narrow, on the heat treat. But this one, I keep trying, and I'm not getting narrow flakes. Just getting regular flakes. Nothing special. Yeah, I'm going to keep trying for a narrow flake, a long narrow flake, because a lot of this is luck, you know. Gotta double check, triple check, quadruple check. It's just, it's luck in many cases. It could be luck that I got a narrow flake on the other one. We'll see. Yeah, I can't seem to get a narrow flake, a long narrow flake. Let's try it again on this one and see what we can get. It's going to be difficult unless I follow a ridge. Appears to be very similar. This one snapped. I mean, it naps just fine, so in a real world situation, it naps just fine. It naps maybe a little bit better because of the long narrow flake on that one. So when it gets down to the nitty gritty thinning at the very end, it may be a lot better. It might be. It may be. I don't know yet. I would have to nap this down. Nap both of these down to thin pieces. Very thin, and then try to thin down the thin pieces to see if there's differences there. Okay, this is already kind of thin, but it's not really thin. It's not thin enough to tell if the heat treat's going to be at advantage or going to give us an advantage at the very end of the process. That's when it matters. Preliminary napping says that they're very similar. Okay, I got my alarm set up for the next heat treat. after I do this video, I'm going to put another heat treat in. Take what I've got out and put another heat treat in so that I can heat that stuff and dry it out overnight. It's not this stuff. It's a different heat treat. So what I'm going to do is I need to get this very thin and then get the other one very thin and then try to thin down the thin pieces side by side. See if there's an advantage. It's difficult to be scientific with this stuff because it's risky. It involves risk. So it may be luck. Some results may be luck and not due to the heat treat. But I'm going to try with this limited amount of exposure, just these 2 flakes, and see if I can actually tell if there's a good or significant difference. I gotta make sure I don't mess it up. I don't have very many pieces to work with. And it's not like I have perfect pieces that are identical to each other. 2 identical perfect pieces, because that's what you actually need to be fully scientific about it. You need 2 perfect pieces. Perfect meaning that there's no defects in the stone, so the defects won't be causing problems that may seem like a heat treat problem. You know what I mean? It can't be a structural problem with the original stone. There can't be any, because if there is, it starts to question whether or not any problems arising are heat treat related or structural stone related. And what I mean by structural stone related is incipient cracks, inconsistency in the material from the top to the bottom, and that sort of thing. So it can't be perfectly scientific, right? It has to be just feel. I've got to try to feel if it's any different, and with experience judge whether or not it's the heat or some sort of structural thing, if there's a problem. So far, no problems. I don't feel like it's snap in half-ish like a lot of heat treat. If it's snap in half-ish, before it actually snaps in half, many times a bite will be taken out of the edge way too easily, and you'll get the feeling that if it breaks that easy on the edge by taking a bite out, it's probably going to snap in half. Probably. Yeah. This was a structural issue. I don't think it was a heat treat issue. So overall, this was knapping well, but the cortex structural issue caused it to snap. See that right there? I can tell it is because you can see the incipient cracks from the cortex going down into the piece. And I didn't see any fire pops or anything on here that could indicate a heat treat structural problem. I don't see any fire popping at all on any of these. Fire pops, if you don't know what they are, they're called pot lids and they pop out. I don't see any issues like that on this material. Alright, so I did get pretty thin with this, and it was, if it didn't have structural issues, I could probably thin it down really well. But anyway, let's go back to this other one, and let's see how this works. If I can tell any major difference from the other piece while it's still fresh on my mind. Everything feels the same pretty much. This one does feel slightly harder. Yeah. And I can feel the steel is acting slightly different with this one. And what I mean by that is the steel seems to be grabbing this one better than it was grabbing the other one. It was seeming to slip more with this one. The steel is grabbing this one a little bit better. It's not slipping. Yeah. And what about doing this experiment with natural tools? Yep, eventually I'm going to be doing deep dives, so eventually we'll do this with natural tools. I can tell you right now from experience that heat treat helps with natural tool knapping much more significantly than with metals. Yeah. A rock that makes you cry if you're using antler will become sweet with antler after heat treating in many cases. I don't know about most cases, but in many cases you go from crying with antler to really liking it after the heat treat. So yeah, you know, eventually I'll do this with antler, but it's so much easier with steel because when you add in a natural tool, there's inconsistencies in the antler. So I could be knapping with antler here and wearing it down and then switching to the other one, right? And then knapping it. But the antler may be hard to start with, and when it wears down, it's softer. So that could change the way it feels. And I might say something that feels heat treat related, but it's actually antler tip related. Like, oh, it's not knapping that well. Well, and it's eating the antler a lot more than the raw stuff was just a second ago. Well, that could be because the antler is getting softer, it's wearing down. Or there could be cracks in it that are making it not contact well enough. Voids and cracks will make it not contact very well. I don't know how to explain this. It would make it contact less solidly if it's starting to get all, instead of compact, fractured like this. If it's fractured apart and the tip, which does happen, it's not going to make solid contact. It's going to make a sloppy contact. This is antler. Okay. Steel, on the other hand, hardly changes at all during the knapping process, other than getting hardened slowly. It does harden up. So it's better in a comparison than using antler. Just so you know. Now, hammerstones, it can affect the natural consistency of the hammerstone does change slightly sometimes. Not as much as antler, but it can change, so that's also a factor. With hammerstones, there may be a slight consistency change with the hammerstone because it is a natural material. So I might be hammerstoning it and saying, well, it works better over here than it did over here just a second ago. But I don't know if it's the hammerstone or the material. So when I do this stuff with natural materials, it's going to be even more difficult to make a scientific comparison. And by scientific, I mean duplicatable. I mean you taking the same tools, the same material, under the same conditions, and do it yourself. You should be able to come up with the same result, right? As long as you have the same skill level in knapping, or, you know, approximately. That's scientific. If you can reproduce the results and people doing it themselves can see the same things that I'm seeing, then we're on the right track. But if everyone's results ends up being different, it's hard to tell why is it so different. All we know is it is different. Why? I don't know. Got to keep doing the experiment over and over and over again. Maybe we can figure it out after lots of knapping. But for the purposes of these videos, it helps to put to rest at least some of the preliminary questions, such as, does it actually make a difference in any way, even a little bit? As long as the difference is greater than 0, I want to know. A lot of people are like that. They want to know, even if the differences are slightly greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, then yes, I want to know. It could be almost imperceptible. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, some people say, well, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to know if it's a big difference. I'm not looking at something that's minutely greater than 0. I'm looking at big differences. Yeah, well, same thing. I don't see any big differences. I mean, we're trying to do both. We're trying to look at minute differences and big differences, or whatever. Middle of the road differences. To me, there's not a big difference at that temperature between these two. There's not that much of a difference. I'm going to put this back in. This other one, where is the other one? I'm going to put some of this heat treat. This is 345? No. I'm already forgetting. It's 385. This is 385. I'm going to put it back in and bump it up to 450. And then test it out. Okay, so the verdict on this is the same. It's almost the same. I was able to run one big, long, narrow flake, which is a good sign. It means it did improve, in my opinion. It did improve slightly. I did not pressure flake it. Okay, I'm not going to pressure flake it because it takes too long to do it at this stage. Once I get to the stage where I can actually have two side-by-side thin down pieces that I'm trying to thin down further, then I'll try the pressure flaking test. Okay? It's just going to save time that way. All right, if I can remember. All right, so you know, remember that minor detail. But that's the plan. I got a lot to go through. There's a lot of stuff here. There's like 6 different batches. It's already been 30 minutes, so 6 times 30 minutes is 3 hours. I don't want to spend more than that doing this, because that's like a bunch of, that's 6 more videos, or 3 more videos, whatever. This one, this is a third heat treat, 385 degrees, 3 hours. Put 1/2 back in at 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. And this is number 4. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with this batch. We're going to put half of this back in at 450. All right. Yeah. I could probably put this back in. Yeah, I'm going to put it back in, but I'm not going to worry too much about re-napping this one. Even if I do re-nap it, I don't think there's going to be any possibility of me knowing whether it's going to feel any different than when I first napped this. You know what I mean? On the next heat treat, I don't think I'll be able to remember how this napped right now compared to how it is going to nap after 450. Because I have slept. I will have slept. I will have slept. Yeah, there you go. And I forget when I sleep. Yeah. Right? Like everybody. Hopefully. Alright, so let's keep this number 4 stuff together. No. What am I going to do? This is going to go back a separate box. Alright. What's next? Should we do a number 6? This is the raw number 6. Yeah. I only have one piece of raw number 6? Dang it. That's not good. If I break it, we're in trouble. Here's the heat treat number 6. Alright. You can see a slight difference in color. This is raw. This is heat treat. Okay. You can see a difference in color. All right. Let's see if we can get these thinned down. It's already pretty thin. Yeah, this is not bad. I don't know why I did not keep more of it raw. I got plenty of pieces. I don't know why I had to put all of those in the heat treat. Anyway, this one is napping okay. I can make a point out of this in the raw state. It's not difficult. Yeah. It's not going to be difficult. Yeah, it feels pretty good. All right, so let's try one of the heat treat pieces. I already took this one out. All right. Just removing a delicate edge there. I can see there is a difference in the luster. It's a little bit more glossy. On the heat treat side. Yep. Let's try to run some long flakes. That's pretty good. Yeah, reasonable. Yep. Reasonable flakage. All right, let's try on this one. Yeah, reasonable flakage. I don't feel much difference. I can see a difference. Let's try a big flake. So far it feels very similar as far as nappability goes. Put my glove on because I'm going to hit this really hard and I don't want a flake to end up in my finger. That ran pretty good. Now there was a little bit of a problem there with this little patch of whatever, but didn't seem to stop the flake though. Problem in that it looks dull, which means it's usually a different consistency. Usually. That's what that indicates. It's running pretty good. These flakes are running pretty well. Yeah, and they're ripply toward the end. These on the other one, there is rippling at the end on that one too a little bit. Let's try a little bit more. I don't feel much of a difference. I'm going to try skimming off the cortex, okay? I'm going to try the same thing on the other one. I went around and I trimmed off a lot of the delicate edges. Okay, skins off pretty well. So far. Let's see. Yeah, still pretty tough, right? But it feels all right. I don't feel a big resistance. at all. I did feel a little bit of resistance on the other one, but not much. But we'll see. Yeah, I don't feel much resistance at all. Yeah, it's skimming pretty good. So let's try the other one. I felt some resistance, especially through that area right there. Let's see how well I can skim off the cortex. I say skim, S-K-I-M. I should be saying skin, S-K-I-N. Skin instead of skim. It feels like I definitely need to hit harder with this one. Yeah, I need to hit harder with the raw, for sure. Yep. They both skin pretty well. Yeah, but I need to hit harder, much harder with the raw. Let's try this again. Yeah, if I hit as hard on this, I end up just blowing away the edge. Hold on. Let's try. Yeah, I don't need to hit as hard. It also has to do with the size. The size differences matter. You know what I mean? They should be exactly the same size to make a fair comparison. But it seems like I don't need to hit as hard on this one. But it has to do with size as well. I can't ignore the size difference. A little bit delicate there. I don't think that was entirely bad cortex type stuff. It's crushing more than the other one. It seems to look better. The difference is in the looks, not really in the feel of it. It feels about the same. It looks different though. The stone definitely feels different. But this one doesn't feel as dry. Not nearly as dry as the other one. Now, the feel of it is somewhat important because if it's smoother, then it will penetrate better. It'll also have less resistance when cutting if it's smoother, and this is smoother. Yeah, I'm still hitting this pretty hard. Yep. So there's not much difference in how hard I need to hit it. I know I said earlier that it seemed like it was easier, but I think it has to do with the size of the piece. But we'll see in a minute, because I'm going to knap the other one down to a much smaller size. This one can be thinned easily. Okay? Let's see about this one. I'm going to try my best to get a good size comparison. So I'm going to remove a lot here. It does feel different. There is a difference. Yeah, there's a slight difference. And it may just be because of the roughness. Just like the other piece, the steel tends to grab better on the rough. I can feel it grabbing better. I know that doesn't mean much to the guys that want to use antler and hammerstone, but just FYI, I guess. The raw stone does react differently with, as far as grabbing, with the natural material also. You know, natural tools. Natural tools will grab onto raw stone easier, or more easily. It more easily cause friction between the raw stone and the tool, and you want that kind of friction. You don't want it too slippery. Too slippery means you need to add more force, and whenever you add more force, the chance of snapping in half goes way up. This, the flakes don't travel as well across to skin the cortex. Yeah, not nearly as easy. It's easier, much easier to skin on the other one. Okay. Yeah. Even though they both work, I found it much easier to skin off the cortex on this one. Same issue with a little bit, it's a little bit delicate. Even in the raw state. Luckily that happened to where I put a lot of force on the point, and both times I put a lot of force on napping the points, a big piece came off, or cracked off. It wasn't a flake, it cracked part of the tip off. But yeah, I can make points out of this in the raw state, and with antler tooth, I can see they'll end up being thick with natural materials. This raw stuff, I think I can get it thinner with natural materials with this one, but not entirely sure. Sometimes it feels like you know, you can run long flakes on it, but the tool may not grab as well on the heat treat as it does on the raw. But even if it grabs really well on the raw, it may not drive the flakes very long in comparison to how long they can be driven on this. As long as the edge is right, you know, I probably don't need to grind it very much with antler on either one. If I excessively grind the heat treat, the antler will have a hard time grabbing the edge. But if I excessively grind this, it's still, I think the antler will still grab it pretty well because it's rough. It's rougher. Yeah. And like I said, you need that resistance or that friction to peel off the flakes without as much force as you would need if it was slippery. If it's slippery, you need to add more force. At least I do. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. Yeah, I can't skin off the cortex easily on this side. I mean, with this one. Yeah, I had to hit that really, really hard. Okay, so let's get the glove back on and see if I can skin the rest of it. And get it thinned down like the other one. I'm hitting it really, really hard now, and it's not really doing much. Size comparison is getting very similar. Okay. Same length. I just need to lose some of the width. So we'll do it now with some skinning flakes, hopefully. No. And that could be just the stone itself, the defect in the stone. That's the fracturing. So don't think to yourself, oh yeah, it really is difficult to skin the cortex on that raw stuff. No, it could be just a defect in the cortex that made it difficult for it to travel. See, there's a crunchy spot right here, whereas on this one I don't think there was any similar defects on the surface, so it's not a perfect comparison, but there may have been. I don't know. I can't remember if there was a crunchy spot on the surface of this or not. Let's try the other side. Yeah, I can still run a long flake. Yeah. It's not as ripply on this side as the heat treat one. The heat treat one has a little bit of rippling going on. This one is mostly smooth and flat. A lot of times when it's ripply, it'll pressure flake well. Yeah, it's just smooth and flat flake scars. Not much rippling going on the raw stuff. On this raw stuff. There are other raw stones where there's plenty of rippling going on. Plenty. So you can't go by that only. Lots of high quality raw will produce ripples just like the heat treat. So yeah, I mean, the rippling, I think, has a lot to do with the stone itself and not actually the technique. And you can see it live. See it here, folks. The rippling effect is not technique necessarily, at least not on this particular piece. The rippling is due to the difference in the heat treat, or the consistency between the heat treat and the raw. Now, do I notice any technique in particular that causes rippling? No, I don't notice any particular technique that will cause rippling or any particular material that causes rippling. Although I do see a lot of weird termination rippling on some instances, where there is a weird chattering going on between the tool and the edge. You know, sometimes if I notice there's difficulty in initiating the fracture here, I get a weird termination here. But it's normally toward the end of the fracture, not the whole length of the flake. Now that concrete in there is posing a problem. Now, what I could do is put this in the heat treat and see if the concrete becomes unconcretized, but I'm not going to. If I were to make a judgment call here, I would leave it at this heat treat level and not mess with it any further. I could take a chance putting it back in, but it may become more delicate. It may pot lid. Some stuff might pop. So there's no reason to put this back in. It naps just fine. This, on the other hand, yeah, I would want to heat treat it. Definitely. Especially because it does have concrete, and the heat treat may soften that up, so to speak. See, these two, they're the same kind of inclusion, right? This one changed color slightly. It's a little bit more of a honey color compared to a tan color. So it affects the inclusions as well. It's still very similar in the amount of rippling, but it's slightly more rippled on this one. Let's do a pressure test before I cut the video. It's already an hour. All right. We'll cut the video at an hour, and then we'll continue with the experimentation on the next video. All right, let's try the heat treat. Pressure flaking on the heat treat. And I'm using the same abrader every time. I'm not switching it around. Well, I could switch to the fine. Let's just do that. Because I know there's going to be a question. Well, you could have used the fine abrader in the pressure stage like you usually do. Yeah. I find it quite easy to pressure flake. It's not like Obsidian, not that easy. But it grabs the edge. I find it quite easy to push off a flake. It immediately responds with not much crushing at all. So that's good. It's good. You can also hear a difference in the way it grinds. A little bit lower pitch on that one. Let's see that? There's a little bit of difference in the way it sounds when you're grinding it. All right. I don't feel that much difference. Well, except for maybe, yeah, it is a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult on the raw. Yeah, but not much. I mean, it's pretty much the same. It felt a little bit more difficult on the raw. Let's just try one more pass. Yeah, it's a little bit more difficult to grind down the raw too. I'm able to dull it much quicker on the heat treat. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the heat treat. Oh yeah, it is easier. But it's not that much different. I keep saying that, but it's not that much different. But it is slightly easier, which can make all the difference, especially when you're down to a thin piece. This is not thin. Yeah, I'm having to put more pressure, okay. And I'm having to grind more. Get that edge dull like the other one. I can dull the edge on the heat treat much faster in order to get a good seat for the tool. So you need a good seat on the edge, or so to speak, to push off a flake. And since this is a little more difficult, the seat actually has to be more robust on the raw with this particular piece. Sometimes it doesn't need to be more robust. with the raw stuff. Sometimes the raw handles it just right. But on this one, yeah. To drive a long flake, I need a good seat. Whereas on the other one, it's a little bit easier. I still need a good seat on the heat treat, but pushing off the flakes is much easier. I would say the raw requires about 30% more force than the heat treat, both in terms of percussion and pressure. I'm just guessing, a third more energy. And it requires more risk to get it thinner too. This one I got it thin pretty fast. This one I'm going to have to really try to figure out where I'm going to hit to remove a long flake or a big wide flake to try to thin that down more. Whereas on this one I didn't have to think much at all. I just drove the flakes across. That inclusion there is a problem, but I can thin it down. I need to get this more narrow, and on this one I didn't need to narrow it. So you can make a wider point with the heat treat than you can with the raw. The edge sharpening results are about the same, but it is easier to pressure flake. Significantly easier, I would say. It's 30% harder to flake the raw. And I don't know, the flake travel is about the same. Yeah. The edge on the raw looks thinner, but it's just because of the way I started out. Right? I didn't start out at exactly the same edge quality. I think this one was actually thinner to start out. I may be wrong, but I think the raw was thinner to start out with. I might be wrong. I might be misremembering that. But it seems like it's very similar. It could be that the raw is better at holding up to being thin and pressure flaked than the heat treat. Maybe. Let's see. I'm going to try to get that edge really thin on the heat treat. If I can't, that means the raw is better at standing up to the pressure flaking and remaining thin. Feeling some premature flakeration on the heat treat. All right, I made an effort to try to get that heat treat edge really thin. So I was able to make pop outs, and you know, with the bulbs of percussion, or bulbs of pressure. I'm going to refine the edge a little bit more. Since the other one, the raw one, is nice and neat, I want to try to get these nice and neat, so I can make a good comparison. Okay. See how nice and neat this edge is? Let's try to match it. Yeah, I'm feeling like it is prematurely flaking, so it's more difficult to press off a flake just on the fly. It has to be better prepared than on the raw side. Yeah. At least this episode. It may be just that I'm having trouble adjusting from one to the other. That could be a possibility. Trying to make it nice and neat, and it's not working. Mainly because it's crushing before I can push off a good flake. Where is the... See, I got a little step fracture. So yeah, it's easier to flake with not as much force, but cosmetically, the raw cosmetically looks better. I'm having trouble keeping it from crushing. As I'm trying to thin it. I mean, I don't need to thin it anymore. I'm just trying to thin it more, and I'm encountering a lot of crushing. Okay. It responds well to damage control. Okay, let's just see what we got. Yeah, I can thin down the heat treat. It just requires a little more finesse to avoid the crushing. Although the heat treat is doing well as far as being able to damage control it. I don't know how well this raw will respond to damage control. Like, can I remove these step fractures from the middle and stuff? Can I actually smooth out the edge if there's a crushing by accident on the edge of the raw? Is it going to be as easy, like, to remove this step fracture as it was to remove a crush spot here on the heat treat? I have a feeling it's not going to be as easy to damage control the raw stuff. But I can get a thin edge on the heat treat. Yeah. So the verdict for this one is I would not want to reheat. I don't want to reheat this because, first of all, working the edge is difficult when it comes down to sharpening it. If I heat treat it anymore, it might get even more crushy. Yeah. It required me to really, really pay attention to how much I was grinding. Now in this one, it took a while to grind it down, but it didn't grind it down very much. But even with the not much grinding, I was still able to push off good flakes. So that's the advantage of this one here. The raw gives me a better sharpening episode, although the end result is very similar. It was just easier for me to sharpen the raw. Now, I would not put this back in the heat treat. It's just fine the way it is. So number 6. No further okay. No further heat treat needed. And this was 385 for 3 hours. 385 degrees Fahrenheit, 3 hours. Is good enough. Okay, good enough. All this in here, good enough. Don't have to worry about it. All right. So what do we do with this one? Up on the shelf. This one goes back in the bag all by its lonesome. What I can do is I can try to find a piece in here with concrete and see if it naps through the concrete well. Let's just see, just for grins and giggles, to see if we can find one that has a piece of concrete that I can try to flake through really quick. Yes, no, maybe, sometimes. It could be a fluke that one has nasty concrete. This has a little bit of it. I don't see any other pieces with the nasty gray, just little bits of it. Not big old problem spots. Yeah. Oh well. I got a feeling that the concrete will loosen up a little bit. Yeah. But this is done. This is good enough. All right. I did not lose my paper. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, if I lose my note, I cannot gloat. All right. This goes over here. So we got two out of the way. There's still 4 more, right? Because I went up to number 6. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the raw ones. All right? Yeah, raw. Gotta make sure that these. All right, and this one, I don't know. I gotta put in a note that it's already been tested. Right, it's already been tested against heat treat. I got to put that in there, even though it's obvious. After a week or so, I won't know what the heck these are, what the status is on these. If they end up sitting there for a while, I'll forget they've already been tested. Or better yet, I may not forget, I just won't be absolutely positively sure. Okay? I seem to remember, but I'm not absolutely positively sure, so I gotta put the note in. Alright. So this is the raw box. Okay. Okay. So keep these separate. Where's my other? I got an empty box. Anyway, I'm going to put all this other stuff in an empty box. Where's my notes? I got to label the other ones. Already been tested against the raw. Yeah. So now I can stick them back with the other ones. And they won't get mixed up because it says it's already been tested with the raw. I won't be doing another duplicate video with the same stupid stuff. Yeah. All right. So there you go. 2 down, and we got 4 more to go. I do have some chunks in here. Let's see, an hour and 23 minutes. I've got some whole nodule chunks that I heat treated with this batch. Let's try this, just out of curiosity. Come on, come on. I know you can do it. I know you got it in you. Yes. Ooh, this one broke up though. Dang it. Although it's hard to tell if it already was damaged. I don't think it was already damaged. I think the heat did that. Let's take some more off. See, it's darker here than it is there. And look, there's a difference. This one got broken up and that one didn't. Come on, I know you can do it. There it goes. Yeah, at 345. What is it? 385. This one broke up. The dark part, anyway. I have a feeling that the lighter part survives better, but maybe not. Nasty. Is it because of the nodule? Size of the nodule? Would it have been better? This is the other part to that one I just broke up. So I forgot to show you. Come here. Come here. Let me see if I can reassemble this. All right. I forgot to show you that this was the other part of this. And there was no weird crackages. Yeah, so this is definitely due to the heat. Yeah. Big difference. Originally cracked the stone open and there was no damage. Now with heat, it's heavily damaged. But it's nice and glossy. It probably would have been successful at a lower temperature. Probably. I should say maybe. I should say maybe. Let's see what this looks like on the inside. Well, this piece looks okay. Could be just the expansion on the larger piece caused it to break up. The lack of ability to expand and contract because of its size. Its thickness, I mean. Because this one looks fine. It's the same stone. But this one is just fine. Perfect. So yeah, it had to do with the size of the nodule. Apparently. Because this one, no problems. It's like some people say, I don't got no problems with mine. Look what you did with yours. Well, mine was probably nice and thick and yours wasn't. Yeah. What else can I get out of here? Can I test this piece out? Is there another piece that goes with it? No? Let's see what this looks like. It's glossier and looks better. As far as nappability, it looks better. Just by looking at it, it looks like it's a little bit better. But you never know. It probably is slightly better to nap. But it's so small that it's hard to tell. Okay. So that's it. I will continue the adventure on the next video.